All right, y'all. So this is a very historically filled weekend. This July 4th weekend. What happened July 4th? On this day in history, this is actually July 3rd today, but for the purposes of this, we'll say it's just July 4th weekend. It is Saturday. What happened? Um, oh yeah, that Declaration of Independence was signed. 1776. What else happened today? Well, on this day, on this time of the year, there were two battles in the War of Northern Aggression that were going on. Sadly, neither ended in our favor. Both in 1863, both at the exact same time. Grant and his invasion force, his Yankee invaders, were here in Mississippi. They were over at Vicksburg. Grant and his armies laid siege to the city of Vicksburg, Mississippi. They shelled it from the gunboats and the ironclads on the Louisiana side and on the Mississippi River. They hit it for over 40 days. It took over 40 days for the city of Vicksburg to say we've had enough. 40 days. I would say that's good resolve. Grant was a brilliant general. I've got to give him that. And he knew how to hit where it hurts. I've got to give him that. When you declare war, war is ugly. When you declare war on something or somebody, you kind of got to know how to hit hard. And that's exactly what he did at Vicksburg. Meanwhile, at the same time that Grant was terrorizing an entire city, laying siege, doing what the Yankee Army typically did, which was, take their frustrations out on entire towns of innocent Southerners, women, children, as we saw at Vicksburg, where they starved an entire city. General Meade was at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Battle of Gettysburg was also in full swing by today, and General Meade was fighting against Robert E. Lee, of course. Robert E. Lee being the superior tactician. I would say Robert E. Lee was one of the best generals on both sides. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a Southerner. The North was saying that. Lincoln wished he had a Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee. Later on, he found his own, Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee, in Ulysses S. Grant and that war criminal William Tecumseh Sherman. I'm going to do a whole video on Sherman. Probably going to be a lengthy one later on. Robert E. Lee, if he would have, I believe, number one, if he would have listened to his commanders, and if he wouldn't have lost Stonewall Jackson almost 2 months prior to this, I believe we probably would have won Gettysburg, but there was too much confusion. Gettysburg happened by almost by accident. It was not designed to fight there. The Army of Northern Virginia had actually become an invasion force itself when it invaded Maryland and Pennsylvania. Robert E. Lee's original objective was Harrisburg. I firmly believe two things. Now, this is just my beliefs. If Robert E. Lee would have made it to Harrisburg, which Gettysburg is not far, and taken Harrisburg, I believe the war would have been over very quickly in favor of the South. I believe that Robert E. Lee could have negotiated with George Meade for terms of surrender. I also firmly believe that this was a gamble. This was a pure roll of the dice. But we needed a victory in the North because we had already been winning pretty good in the South. I mean, let's face it, we were kicking ass. We kicked a lot of it. But if Stonewall Jackson would not have got killed by his own men, itchy trigger fingers, by accident 2 months earlier, Robert E. Lee would have had the complete support of his commanders and would have made it to Harrisburg and took it. That would have pretty much been the end of the war. That would have brought northern warmongers who were so hell bent on let's let's kill the Johnny Rebs. Let's put them back in their place. That would have ended. And the South would be a very different country today. It would be its own country. I firmly believe that. I also wonder if England and France wouldn't have joined in at that point on the side of the South to help quickly end the war. England was already pissed off at the Union over the Trent Affair. Trent Affair happened in 1862. I'm going to do a video on that as well. The Trent Affair was an interesting occurrence, and like I said, I will get into that later on. But let's just say that those in London and Parliament were not too impressed with Lincoln. But when you think about it, Vicksburg Vicksburg was minor compared to Gettysburg. The South lost two armies and lost two pretty significant battles in the same weekend, same week. Pretty horrific. And going to Vicksburg, fast forward to 2021, 158 years later, there's still buildings in Vicksburg that are said to have cannonballs that are unexploded in their walls to this day. I don't know, maybe the Army Corps of Engineers or, some kind of EOD people have gone in there and made the cannonballs safe, but didn't want to remove them for historical purposes. I'm not real sure. Could be a myth. I don't go to Vicksburg that often. I think last few times I was there, I was just passing through on I-20. But when you think about it, it makes one wonder. Now, not to take away from, not trying to take away from the North. They fought hard and they, actually reaped the benefits of them fighting hard. By 1863, both sides were exhausted. We'd been at war for 2 and some odd years. People were tired of seeing their sons and daughters die on both sides. Yes, I say daughters. Yes, I say mothers. Because the civilian population was hit pretty hard too. The South, you know, the South still had some fight left. And we fought for another 2 years after this. But July 4th, 1863 was really the turning point in the war for us. That was really where it turned to the favor of the North. The North had more population. Not to mention the Emancipation Proclamation brought a whole new set and a newfound morality to the war. Even though in my previous video I have debunked the morality of the Emancipation Proclamation. I will say this for Ulysses S. Grant, though. He understood what war meant. And he eventually knew how to win it. Granted, yes, it was rumored that he was a drunk. Abraham Lincoln also said, I'd like to find out what the man drinks so I can give it to all of my generals. Grant was a brilliant commander. He was very headstrong. I will give Grant that all day long. This is the day, this was the day in history for men to find out what their self worth actually was in 1863. It took a lot of guts and fortitude. And again, I'm not going to take that away from the North. I'll tell you another one of my favorite Northern officers. Oh, you mean he actually likes some Northern officers? Yes, I do. My favorite one that I firmly believe had a very deep conviction in his beliefs. A man that I believe knew exactly why he was fighting. An academic, an educated man, very educated man. He was a college professor. Yes, I'm talking about Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, colonel with the 20th Maine. If I'm going to mention Gettysburg on this day, I've got to mention his tactics on Little Round Top. The man was running low on ammunition, just about out of ammunition. I believe it was the 21st Alabama was coming up Little Round Top. So in a desperation attempt, now the South had something that would scare the hell out of the Northern Army. It wasn't our guns, it wasn't our bayonets. It was our blood curdling, make your hair stand up on the back of your neck rebel yell. It wasn't really a yell, it was more like a screech, by all accounts I've read. And it was so eerie that just that sound would make you draw up like a cat when it gets scared. Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain understood this. This was a psychological effect of the war. When Billy Yank heard that from Johnny Reb, oh yeah, the fight was on. Well, what else happened? Little Round Top, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain ordered everybody to fix bayonets and move down like the swinging of a door, like this. That's what he wanted. He wanted people to come down in a swinging motion off in that hill. He said, I want y'all to holler as loud as you can and drown out the sound of that rebel yells. Because he understood the psychology of the rebel yell. It was to instill fear. He did so, and it was such a marvelous of a move that he actually protected the flank. And sent that regiment of Alabama troops back down. Brilliant tactic. A complete gamble, a complete roll of the dice. Could have been the end of it. Could have been, if the 21st Alabama Regiment would have turned and got on their flank, that could have actually turned the tide of the battle. believe there was a Pennsylvania regiment next to them. I'm not sure which one. They were amazed when they saw the 20th Maine coming down in a swinging motion in a bayonet charge. Completely, just about completely out of ammunition. It's amazing how desperate people get in a battle that they come up with something like that on the fly. I do have to give that to Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. Happy 4th of July, y'all. And also, keep in mind, this is the day that turned the tide of the war in 1863. Thank you for watching.